Hey guys, Greg Bowles here, CEO of Bowles & Associates. This week I wanted to share some hints and tips with you from our team intelligence system to do with how our ancient warrior within us is actually killing productivity. Now if you read the article you'll be familiar with this, and if you haven't I recommend reading the article, but if not, hey, hang with us for the next few minutes as I'm going to cover through that content. What I meant by the ancient warrior is killing our productivity is that each of us have an ancient warrior within us, and that's really our survival instinct. It's there to keep us safe, and it's that fight or flight reflex which you guys may have heard of. Now back in our ancestral days, back in the Stone Age, this particular instinct was specifically needed because they needed to know when to fight and actually when to run. And it might have been taking down the saber-toothed tiger to help feed the family or to feed themselves, whatever it was. And it really was there purely for survival. Now, fast forward to modern times, what does this have to do with business, I hear you say? It's a good question. You see, in a modern society where we have shelter, we have food, we're only a drive away from shops, we have running water, we have relationships, an abundance of relationships in the world nowadays. We can connect with people all around the world by this wonderful thing called the internet. Yet back then we didn't have that. It was just small tribes. So there was these parts of our brain that would keep us safe. And in modern world, back to the business days, is that the problem with this is that the same types of anxiety and fear and that sort of thing play out in our everyday lives, yet they affect us in different ways nowadays. And what I mean by that is that you won't see someone running from whatever it is, a saber-toothed tiger. The saber-toothed tiger now is the mind thoughts. It's their own thought strategies. That's the saber-toothed tiger that they're actually having a fight with. Now, as a manager and leader, what this boils down to, what's the bottom line, is that it will affect their productivity and it will also affect their growth. It will mean that they won't necessarily want to strive to that next level where they know that they're deep down, they're actually capable of doing that. So today I wanted to share some tips for you on coaching those sorts of situations. It's quite a common thing. So you'll see the sort of symptoms come out, as I said, of anxiety, of worry, of stress, of overwhelm. And before we get to those tips, I wanted to share with you a quick story of how I actually coached a client through that. I was coaching a client a little while ago who came to me, who was working on in a contract position at the time, and he was seeking permanent employment. Yet his worry about seeking permanent employment was actually affecting his performance at work so much that it was actually causing him to put his current contract in jeopardy. So what we did was we worked out, and I knew that what his bottom line was he wanted the permanency of the pay packet, so he had the security to provide for his family, which is it's a beautiful thing to be able to do that as the man, as the provider. That's sort of what he wanted to do. So by using the team intelligence system, what we did was we explored what strategies he was using with approaching his role as a contractor rather than a permanent employee. And we found that he was actually sabotaging his own success. And what we did was we looked at how he could actually work smarter, how he could approach things differently, how he could add more value to the organization and steer his focus away from where he was looking at what was wrong, what he couldn't focus on, what he couldn't control, to where he wanted to be in the permanent role. Now we did this over a couple of sessions, but his immediate change was when he came back after the first session and said to me, "Thank you so much for giving me the insight as to how narrow my focus was," because he was literally just focusing on what was wrong rather than what the opportunities were in his situation. It was only a matter of I think it was a couple of weeks or a couple of months later that I got an email from him with some great news saying that he'd actually been offered a permanent role. Obviously he'd provided so much more value to the organisation that he was working for, and they really saw him to be wanting to be part of the team, which was a fantastic outcome. Now quickly moving on to the tips, guys. So when you're coaching or leading a staff member that's come to you with, with stress, with anxiety, with worry, it's generally where the sticking point will be for them is they're either stuck in past mistakes or they're worried about making the same mistakes again or just making mistakes in the future. Now what this means is that there's a fear of failure somewhere around there and they've equated something to that of that's bad. So how you actually transition through those mistake periods, how do you guys actually deal with mistakes? Is it something that you just learn and move on with, or do you actually get out the ruler and crack people across the knuckles and say, bad? Hopefully that isn't the case with you guys. I trust that we've all obviously moved on from that, but it does still affect people. And another common sign that you'll see with these people is that when you make a suggestion, they'll follow it up with yes, but, and it's usually yes, but what if such and such happens? Yes, but what if the project runs over? Yes, but what if the project goes over budget? Yes, but what if the sales figures aren't met this month? What's then going to happen? And really what it boils down to is it's just a human fear of them not being enough. They want to be enough, they want to fit in the team, they want to do really well, they want to perform. The way that you actually coach them through this is to get them to focus away from where they're worrying to what they can do now. That's the main thing. Now, the next line of questions is a technique called Kaizen questioning, which gets them to take small steps forward. So rather than looking at the mountain right at the peak and they're right down here, it's to actually work out what the steps are individually and get them just to get the momentum of going. So the first thing you really want to ask them is get them to explain what's happening. And then the first thing you want to ask them is, okay, what's something you can do right now to move yourself toward your goal? And then once they've actually written that down, ask them this question. And then what's the next step? And then the next step and the next step. You get my drift. That's how to get them back on track where they're focusing on the goal and not the problem. I trust that helps, guys. The next line of tips that I wanted to share with you was to do with performance managing staff, or to get them to that next level when you know that they can be performing better. Because as managers and leaders, it is our role to see that quality in the people that we work with and to see who's ready to take that next step. They might just not know that they're ready to take that next step. So when you're sitting down with these people, the types of conversations you're going to be having will be around, I'm not sure I'm ready for that. Yes, but there'll be something missing. It's a degree, it's an amount of experience, it's whatever, the insert excuse here. And that's really what that is. It's their ancient warrior in playing out that's keeping them safe. The problem is, while it's keeping them safe, they're not moving and growing as a member of your team, which is ultimately what you want them to do, isn't it? So what you want to be doing here is you want to be focusing on a fear of failure. Now, with looking at their, especially performance, the best thing to do and the most effective thing to do here, guys, is to focus on the results themselves. Not the person, the results. Now, you're probably already doing that, but that's a great place to start. So by focusing on the results, you remove them from the big picture and you just focus on the results. And by focusing on the results, if they're not where they should be, it's just a matter of having the behavioral flexibility to change the strategy and to try something different. And then if those results aren't what you want, try something different, try it again. There's a success principle known in neuro-linguistic programming called there is no such thing as failure, there is only feedback. Now I live by that day by day, and it's really freed me up and it's freed my clients up by teaching them, because there truly is nothing such as failure. It's only a meaning we've given to a word in the English language. All we're left with is results. If the results aren't what you want, do something different. Try again. Try something different. That's the way to actually get towards your goals. You won't actually achieve success without making some sort of mistake, failure, whatever you want to call it, along the way. Ask the most successful entrepreneurs, the most successful people in the world, what they do is they fail fast. Now, I'm using the term fail because everyone knows it. I don't like it. I have my own meetings that I put toward it. But anyway, I transgress. Let's go back to what we were talking about. So when you're dealing with the results and you want to get them to the next level, what you want them to do is to get them into a space where they're willing to actually start to accept the new role, to accept that new project, to accept that new responsibility, and get them to try it on as a hat. And take them through a scenario and say, okay, sure. Just say, for instance, Jack, look, I appreciate, you're obviously a little bit nervous about this, and perhaps you're thinking you're not ready for this. What if I was to give you a scenario where hypothetically you were to actually wear this hat for a day? How would that be for you? And what they would then do is that they would tell you all of the fears and all of the mistakes they're going to make, yet they haven't even made them yet. So that's what's holding them back. So what you want to do is walk them through that and say, okay, well, if X happened, what's the worst thing that's going to happen out of that? And get them to discuss that with you. Because once they get that out of the way, the archaic brain, our ancient warrior, says, okay, I've done my bit, now I can go to sleep. And then what you can do is have a more productive conversation with them and say, okay, well, what if there was no such thing as failure, only results? And if you were to wear that hat, and if you were to achieve this particular result, would that be satisfactory for you? We're not perfect. There is no such thing as perfection. And that's the thing that they need to get their head around. As soon as your staff get their head around that and be willing to make mistakes, but when they make mistakes, to learn from them. It's only an issue, guys, when they make mistakes and they keep making the same mistakes because the learning actually hasn't been taken on board. Anyway, guys, I trust that's been of value. Would love any feedback you've got. Please go and implement this immediately. It is something you can do straight away. It's some very simple coaching skills that you guys can use straight away as managers or leaders. And there are a lot of people in the workforce that do suffer from this day by day. Unfortunately, they go unnoticed, and it's only generally performance management time or some other significant time where the stress starts to hit a little bit more. Next week, we're going to be having a look at some hints and tips around how to coach different personality types. And I'm going to be helping you with actually how to do that, what the personality types are, and why one coaching method with them is actually not very effective at all. And I'm going to give you some tips on how to move forward with that. If you'd like more information about the Team Intelligence System, get in touch with me, send me an email, give me a phone call. Be more than happy to have a chat with you. And look forward to connecting with you next week. Thanks for watching, guys. Cheers.